Chapter 15 of The Metal Monster. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lucy LaFaro. The Metal Monster by Abraham Merritt. Chapter 15. The House of Norhala. Her eyes closed, her body relaxed. The potion had done its work quickly. We laid her beside Ventnor on the pile of silken stuffs, covered them both with a fold, then looked at each other long and silently, and I wondered whether my face was as grim and drawn as his. "It appears," he said at last curtly, "that it's up to you and me for powwow quick. I hope you're not sleepy." "I am not," I answered as curtly, the edge of nerves in his manner of questioning doing nothing to soothe my own. "And even if I were, I would hardly expect to put all the burden of the present problem upon you by going to sleep." "For God's sake, don't be a prima donna," he flared up. "I meant no offense." "There's nothing inexplicable in that, at any rate," I answered. "Abnormal sensitivity of perception due to the cutting off of all sensual impressions. There's nothing uncommon in that. You have its most familiar form in the some special ones of her own." "I've an idea," I hesitated. "An idea that there was no exaggeration in that story she told. An idea that, if anything, she underplayed it." "I too," I replied somberly. "And to me it is the most hideous phase of this whole situation. And for reasons not all connected with Ruth," I added. "Hideous," he repeated. "Unthinkable. Yet all this is unthinkable. And still it is. And Ventnor coming back that way, like a lost soul finding voice. Was it raving, Goodwin? Or could he have been, how was it he put it, in touch with these things and their purpose? Was that message truth?" "Ask yourself that question," I said. "Man, you know it was truth. Had not inklings of it come to you even before he spoke?" "They had to me. His message was but an interpretation, a synthesis of facts I, for one, lacked the courage to admit." "I too," he nodded. "But he went further than that. What did he mean by 'the keeper of the cones,' and that the things were vulnerable under the same law that orders us? And why did he command us to go back to the city? How could he know? How could he?" "There's nothing inexplicable in that, at any rate," I answered. "Abnormal sensitivity of perception due to the cutting off of all sensual impressions. There's nothing uncommon in that. You have its most familiar form in the sensitivity of the blind. You've watched the same thing at work in certain forms of hypnotic experimentation, haven't you? Through the operation of entirely understandable causes, the mind gains the power to react to vibrations that normally pass unperceived, is able to protect itself through this keying up of perception into a wider area of consciousness than the normal. Just as in certain diseases of the ear the sufferer, though deaf to sounds within the average range of hearing, is fully aware of sound vibrations far above and far below those the healthy ear registers." "I know," he said. "I don't need to be convinced. But we accept these things in theory, and when we get up against them for ourselves, we doubt. How many people are there in Christendom, do you think, who believe that the Saviour ascended from the dead, but who, if they saw it today, would insist upon medical inspection, doctor's certificates, a clinic, and even after that render a Scotch verdict? I'm not speaking irreverently. I'm just stating a fact." Suddenly he moved away from me, strode over to the curtained oval through which Norhala had gone. "Dick," I cried, following him hastily, "where are you going? What are you going to do?" "I'm going after Norhala," he answered. "I'm going to have a showdown with her, or know the reason why." "Drake," I cried again, aghast, "don't make the mistake Ventnor did. That's not the way to win through. Don't! I beg you, don't!" "You're wrong," he answered stubbornly. "I'm going to get her. She's got to talk." He thrust out a hand to the curtains. Before he could touch them, they were parted. Out from between them slithered the black eunuch. He stood, motionless, regarding us. In the ink-black eyes a red flame of hatred. I pushed myself between him and Drake. "Where is your mistress, Yuruk?" I asked. "The goddess has gone," he replied sullenly. "Gone?" I said suspiciously, for certainly Norhala had not passed us. "Where?" "Who shall question the goddess?" he asked. "She comes and she goes as she pleases." I translated this for Drake. "He's got to show me," he said. "Don't think I'm going to spill any beans, Goodwin, but I want to talk to her. I think I'm right, honestly I do." After all, I reflected, there was much in his determination to recommend it. It was the obvious thing to do. Unless we admitted that Norhala was superhuman, and that I would not admit. In comma, and of forces we did not yet know. En rapport with these people of metal, sealed with that alien consciousness Ruth had described, all these, yes. But still a woman, of that I was certain, and surely Drake could be trusted not to repeat Ventnor's error. "Yuruk," I said, "we think you lie. We would speak to your mistress. Take us to her." "I have told you that the goddess is not here," he said. "If you do not believe, it is nothing to me. I cannot take you to her, for I do not know where she is. Is it your wish that I take you through her house?" "It is," I said. "The goddess has commanded me to serve you in all things." He bowed sardonically. "Follow." Our search was short. We stepped out into what, for want of better words, I can describe only as a central hall. It was circular, and strewn with thick piled small rugs, whose hues had been softened by the alchemy of time into exquisite shadowy echoes of color. The walls of this hall were of the same moonstone substance that had enclosed the chamber upon whose inner threshold we were. They whirled straight up to the dome into a crystalline cylindrical cone. 4 doorways like that in which we stood pierced them. Through each of their curtainings in turn we peered. All were precisely similar in shape and proportions, radiating in a luneted curved base triangle from the middle chamber, the curvature of the enclosing globe forming back wall and roof, the translucent slicings the sides, the circular floor of the inner hall the truncating lunette. The first of these chambers was utterly bare. The one opposite held a half-dozen suits of the lacquered armor, as many wicked-looking short and double-edged swords and long javelins. The third I judged to be the lair of Yuruk. Within it was a copper brazier, a stand of spears, and a gigantic bow, a quiver full of arrows leaning beside it. The fourth room was littered with coffers great and small,